Hello, and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Pinocchio. Chapter 2, The Prankster Puppet is Born. Geppetto lived in a small, simple house. The only thing rich about him was his imagination. Instead of a fireplace, he had painted one on the wall. Over the fake fire, instead of a real pot full of real food, was painted pot. It was bubbling over so beautifully that you could almost smell the delicious stew painted inside. Geppetto couldn't wait to start carving and painting his puppet. He even had the perfect name picked out. Pinocchio. Upon placing the finishing touches on Pinocchio's eyes, Geppetto was surprised to see the eyes blinking and staring at him. "What are you staring at?" Geppetto asked, but there was no response. Next, Geppetto painted the puppet's perfect little nub of a nose. To his surprise, the still wet nose immediately began to grow. Geppetto kept trimming it, but he couldn't keep up. Soon the little nub looked like a long, narrow needle. Ducking away from the still-growing nose, Geppetto gave up and started painting the puppet's mouth. As soon as the mouth was finished, however, it began to laugh and make fun of its maker. "Stop it!" Geppetto said angrily. And how did the mouth respond? It stuck out one very long tongue. Geppetto decided he would ignore this bad behavior. After all, he had a great deal more work to do. As he was finishing the puppet's delicate fingertips, Geppetto felt a cool breeze on his bald head. Why, the puppet had used his brand new hands to pull off his maker's wig. Pinocchio put the hair on his own head, which was so much smaller than Geppetto's head that half of the puppet was promptly hidden. Geppetto was slightly nervous. He wasn't even done making his wooden doll, and already the creature was misbehaving. Geppetto probably should have considered such risk before he started, but it was too late now. Retrieving his stolen wig and placing it back on his own head, Geppetto bent down to paint and polish Pinocchio's legs and feet. And wouldn't you know it, as soon as those feet were finished, one of them flew up and kicked Geppetto right in the nose. "I must be patient," Geppetto told himself, just as one is with a little baby. Taking the puppet under his arm, Geppetto put him on the floor and showed him how to walk. He learned just like a human child, bit by bit, one foot after the other. Unlike a human child, however, Pinocchio got the hang of the walking business in no time at all, and quickly graduated to running around the room. In fact, he ran right out the open door and down the street. Geppetto tried to catch him, but it was no use. The puppet ran like the wind. Instead of stopping him, as Geppetto begged, the townspeople just stepped aside and stared and laughed. Pinocchio ran and ran. In fact, he ran right into the legs of a policeman who did not take too kindly to runaway puppets. Grabbing Pinocchio by the nose, which made a perfect handle, he held him until Geppetto reached the scene. Geppetto thanked the officer. To Pinocchio, he said, "Young man, you and I are going to settle this when we get home." Pinocchio threw himself on the ground and refused to move. "Help!" he cried. "Don't let this mean man take me." A concerned crowd gathered around. "Shame on you, Geppetto," they cried. "Of course he doesn't want to go home if you're only going to hit him." "Who said anything about hitting?" Geppetto said. But Pinocchio was quite the actor. "Yes," he cried, "my father beats me terribly." The policeman, who took even less kindly to poor parents than to runaway puppets, now came and grabbed Geppetto. "Ungrateful boy," Geppetto cried as he was dragged away to jail. "To think I tried to make the perfect puppet." While with his father in prison, Pinocchio was free to do as he liked. Running through the fields like a wild and happy billy goat, he raced home, locked the door behind him, and threw himself on the couch. "This is the life," he sighed. Just then he heard someone saying, "Cri, cri, cri." Looking around, he saw a big cricket crawling off the wall. "Is that you making that sound?" Pinocchio demanded. "It is," Cricket replied, "and I will have you know that I've been living in this room and making that sound for well over 100 years. "Well, it's my room now," Pinocchio said, "so I suggest you stop talking and get out." "Shame on you," Cricket said, "the way you disobey your father and ran away from home." "Keep cricking, silly bug," Pinocchio replied. "Tomorrow I will run away again. Do you really think I'm going to stay here and get sent to school and forced to study? I'm going to play and chase butterflies and climb trees all day." "You are the silly one," Cricket insisted. "If you don't go to school, you'll turn into a stupid donkey and everyone will laugh at you. At the least, you should learn a trade, a skill of some sort, so that you can earn an honest living. Good idea, Pinocchio replied, and it seemed as if he was serious. You know what trade I'm going to learn? What? Cricket asked. The trade of being a bum, Pinocchio screamed, laughing. I will be a professional eater, drinker, and sleeper. So there. The smart old Cricket sighed. Oh, Pinocchio, he said sadly, those trades will only send you to the hospital or in prison. You are making me angry, Pinocchio warned him, but Cricket was getting angry too. I feel sorry for you, he continued, with your wooden head. In a fit of a temper, Pinocchio leaped up, grabbed Geppetto's hammer, and threw it at the Cricket. But thankfully, Pinocchio's aim was not as fine-tuned as his temper. You missed me by a mile, Cricket huffed, unharmed, and promptly left the house. As night fell, a queer feeling settled over Pinocchio's stomach. What's that? Pinocchio wondered. Then he remembered he hadn't eaten anything the entire time he had been alive. I am absolutely starving, he realized. Oh, if only my father was here to make me dinner. He ran to the fireplace where the pot was bubbling over, but then he reached out to touch it. He discovered that it was only a delicious-looking painting. Pinocchio ran around the house, looking for even the smallest scrap of bread, but there was nothing. He was positively dizzy with hunger. Cricket was right, he thought, and he started to cry. It was wrong of me to disobey my father and run away from home. Suddenly, in the corner of the room, Pinocchio saw something round and white. An egg, he cried. I'm saved. And now, how shall I cook you? Pinocchio asked the egg. Should I fry you, or boil you, or poach you? Deciding that poaching would be the fastest method, Pinocchio placed a pan filled with water on the stove, turned on the heat, and cracked the egg on the side of the pan. But instead of the uncooked yolk that Pinocchio expected, out came a fluffy yellow chick, grinning broadly. Why, thank you, Puppet, the chick said, stretching and bowing. I thought I would have to break the shell myself. Wishing Pinocchio good luck and bidding him goodbye, the little chick spread his wings and flew straight out the window. Staring after his escaped dinner, Pinocchio began to whine and stomp his wooden feet. The noise he made was not loud enough to drown out his growling stomach. Oh, he thought, if only Cricket was still here, maybe he could have made me some dinner. Pinocchio decided that he should go for a walk to the village. If he begged, perhaps somebody would give him a bit of bread. It was cold and stormy, not the best of nights to be outside begging for bread. Pinocchio was afraid of the dark and storms, but it was getting late, but he was so hungry they set out in search of food anyway. He ran as fast as his wooden legs would carry him. When he got to the village, the streets were dark and deserted. All the stores were closed. Despite desperate, Pinocchio ran up to a door and rang the bell wildly. Someone had to answer. An old man in pajamas opened a second-story window and looked out. Who's there? He shouted down angrily. What do you want this time of night? I know it's late, but could you please give me a bit of bread? Pinocchio called up. I'm so terribly hungry. Wait right there, the old man said, and Pinocchio thought he was saved. I'll throw something down. Pinocchio stood underneath the window preparing to catch a delicious dinner. Instead, he felt a shower of ice-cold water pour down on his poor wooden head. Looking up, he saw the man holding a now empty pot upside down. That will teach you to ring people's doorbells when they are peacefully asleep, the man yelled. Upset, the soaking wet puppet walked back home. Once he sat down on Geppetto's little work stool and put his feet up on the stove to dry them. The fire felt so nice and warm on his cold toes, but they were, after all, cold wooden toes, and when he fell asleep, a spark from the fire landed on them and they began to burn. While Pinocchio snored happily away, not feeling a thing, his feet blackened and turned to ash. At dawn, a loud knocking at the door woke Pinocchio. Who is it? He called, yawning and rubbing his sleepy eyes. It is I, a voice replied. It was Geppetto's voice. Pinocchio was so excited that he jumped up to run to the door. He didn't know yet that his feet were gone, but because they were, he tripped and hit the floor with an enormous bang. Open the door for me, Geppetto shouted. Oh, Father, I can't, Pinocchio cried, rolling around footless on the floor. Why can't you? Pinocchio spotted a cat playing in a pile of wood chips in the corner. The cat has eaten my feet. he replied. Open this door, Geppetto warned, or you'll go to bed tonight without supper. Oh, father, please believe me. I cannot stand up. Finally, Geppetto entered through a window. Seeing that Pinocchio was telling the truth, he felt horrible. Picking up his puppet, Geppetto cried as he rubbed Pinocchio's wooden head. How did this happen, he asked. Pinocchio wasn't sure. In between sobs, he told his father about his night. When he mentioned putting up his feet up on the stove to dry them, Geppetto said, Ah. Now my feet are gone, but my hunger isn't, Pinocchio finished. Geppetto pulled 3 pears out of his pocket. He had been saving them for his own breakfast, but his son was hungry. Pinocchio instantly perked up. Almost immediately, though, he had a demand. I do not eat pears that hadn't been peeled, he told his father. Geppetto was surprised. Are you really such a fusspot? He asked. In this world, my boy, we must learn to eat everything, because we never know when we might find ourselves hungry again. But I don't like the skins, Pinocchio insisted. Please, won't you peel them for me? So Geppetto took out his knife and peeled the pears, leaving the skins on the table. When he finished the first bale, Pinocchio started to throw the core away. But Geppetto stopped him. Don't throw the core away, we may have some use for it. Pinocchio grew enraged. First the peels and now this. Do you imagine that I, Pinocchio, would ever eat a pear core? He sniffed. Never say never, Geppetto said, and placed the pear cores next to the skins on the table. Well, wouldn't you know, a few minutes later, Pinocchio was still hungry. Is there anything else to eat? He whined. Only the skins and cores, Geppetto replied. Oh, all right, Pinocchio cried. He picked up a piece of peel and then a core and started nibbling on them. He complained to himself and made faces with every bite, but before he knew it, he devoured every last bit of both and felt undoubtedly better. I don't want to told you I say so, Geppetto said, but after all, I did. Okay, that's the end of that chapter. Okay, I know that this is just how this world works, but if I was carving and I started seeing the stuff Geppetto did, I would have a freak out. Demon puppet! Okay, well, see you later.